Hi everyone, it's me Nim here. Welcome to season 2 of Sunday Chats with Nim, and I'm super excited about the new season and about all that I have planned for today. So I'm just going to wait for a few more moments just to make sure everyone gets notified about today's session. It's the first for 2019 and of course the first episode of the second season. So lots of exciting things in store. And those of you who are familiar with Sunday Chats with Nim, like I always say, don't forget to say hello to me and hi to me so that I know you're listening and so that I know how many people are actually on board during the live sessions. Now, of course, this session will get posted afterwards. The recording will be available on my Facebook page as well as on the on my YouTube channel. So not to worry if you haven't logged in, but it's always exciting to have people on board during the live session. Hi Vandana, hi Divya, hi Puneet. Welcome aboard for this first episode of season 2 of Sunday Chats with Nim. Super excited, and I hope you're excited as well. And today is going to be a little different to what I've done last year, because today is going to be a sort of, I'm going to step you through a behind the scenes demonstration of how I learn from all the books that I read. So I'm going to come to that very soon. First of all, if you happen to be a fellow book lover like myself, please type book lover in the comments, just so that I know how many people belong to the same tribe as I do, that of people who love reading books. So if you are a book lover like I am, just type the word book lover in the comments below. And let me quickly introduce myself for those of you who are absolutely new to me and the work I do. My name is Nim Golkar. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I'm an author, a speaker, and a success coach. So basically, I've made it my life's mission to help as many people as possible lead fulfilled lives, both in their personal as well as professional space. So I have a lot of coaching programs, and I know many of you might be familiar with those. And of course, I have a lot of workshops as well that I conduct face-to-face as well as online. Happy New Year to you too, Divya. So don't forget to type book lover in the comments if you are a book lover like I am. Now, today what I'm going to talk about is how to maximize all the knowledge that we get from the books we read. But before I come to that, I just want to talk about an exciting announcement that I put up on Facebook earlier this morning as well. And that announcement is for season 2 of Sunday Chats with Nim. So what I'm going to do is, I've always loved interactive sessions. I like sessions where people engage in conversation and where there is a two-way flow of conversation. It's not just me speaking from one side of the camera. So what I'm going to do is at the end of every Sunday Chats with Nim, now season 2 is going to be 12 episodes. At the end of every episode, my team and I will go through and make a note of all the people who have actively participated and engaged in the session. And at the end of the 12 episodes, we will put your name into a draw, and we're going to pull out one lucky winner. And what does the lucky winner win? The lucky winner, he or she wins 2 prizes. Firstly, they will win a copy of my book, Unlock the Real You. That's that. You're probably seeing the mirror image of this, and that's thanks to my Facebook Live settings. So you can win this book, which is a labor of love, and I wrote it with a lot of love, and I'm sure some of you have already read it. And you'll also win 1 hour of live coaching with me, a 1-hour session of live coaching, exclusively one-on-one. If you're in Sydney, it will be in person at my office. If you're interstate or overseas, it will be via Skype. So that's the competition. All you need to do is make sure you participate in each Facebook Live session. You can do that by writing comments. You can do that by asking questions. You can do that by sharing insights. All I ask is that to be eligible to enter the draw for the competition. It doesn't work if all you're going to say is, just a hi or a hello. We actually need meaningful participation for you to be eligible to win these prizes. So super excited about that. And I will later, for the new arrivals on board, I will talk about the competition again further into today's session. And Vandana says, Divya said, book lover, and nowadays love to read in any media. Fantastic. Vandana is a book lover too, but not read much in the last few years. Never too late to start, Vandana. Like I say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And Puneet Kaur says, book lover, but hardly get any time. Puneet, you're in for a treat today because you're going to get to know about some strategies I use myself to make time for reading. So basically, I read on an average about 20 books a year, on an average. So sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but on an average I read about 20 books a year. Now, I find that a lot of people read a lot of nonfiction or self-help or inspirational, motivational books. And what they all say to me is while they're reading the book, they are supercharged and they're super motivated and they feel like they're ready to take on the world. But as soon as they've turned over the last page of the book and put it back into the bookshelf or returned it to the library, that motivation magically fizzles away and they do absolutely nothing with all the wonderful stuff they've learned in that book. So let me know if you too have faced that problem at some time where, you read a fantastic book, you learn a lot from it, but you actually do nothing with it to change your life. It's all there in theory, but you're unable to put it in practice. And like I always say, if you want to succeed in life, if you want to get ahead in life, then you must utilize all the stuff that you are reading in all these wonderful, wise books. I read this beautiful quote once which basically said that if you read something in a book and you don't act on it, then it simply remains information. To turn information into knowledge, you must act. And that is something I've always been doing. I experiment with all the information that I read, and I read a lot. When I say I experiment with it, what I mean is I put it into practice and I do something about it. And for me, that has been the biggest and most effective strategy to reach many of my goals, both the big goals and the small goals. So today I'm going to share with you all of that. Let me say hi, Tejas, Happy New Year. Hi, Manasi, welcome on board. Lovely to have you all here. Today I'm talking about how to maximize the learning that you gain from the books that you read. And I'm actually going to go through a step-by-step demonstration of what I do when I start reading a new book. Before I start with the process, and I've got lots of stuff here to show you all, very exciting. Actually, my desk is pretty crowded today because there's bits and bobs that I've got to show you all. Now, many people might say that they've asked me whether I buy books or whether I borrow books from the library. So there's no clear-cut answer. Yes, I am a member of several local libraries, and I do occasionally borrow books from the library, but for the large part, I prefer buying books from the bookstore. Now, one of the reasons is because I love to read a good book again and again and again. And you can't always do that when it's borrowed from a library. Secondly, I love to make notes in the books that I read. So yes, I'm guilty of scribbling through the entire book that I'm reading. And you obviously can't do that if it's a borrowed book. So I prefer buying books, and it's also one of the reasons why I never lend my books to anyone in the world, because all the books that I have, all the books on my bookshelves are packed with a lot of my scribbles and a lot of my thoughts, which are deeply personal in nature. And that's why I don't give my books out to other people, because there's lots of valuable stuff there that I've written. So that's another reason why I prefer to buy books from the bookstore. There's no right or wrong way. You should do whatever suits you best. Having said that, people say, Nim, if you buy books, then that can be quite an expensive hobby. You know, friends, the way I look at it is I typically buy nonfiction. I don't buy so much fiction or novels. I typically buy more nonfiction. And I don't look at it as an expense. I look at it as an investment. I'm investing in my development. I'm investing in my future. I'm investing in my growth. I like to use the word investment because when you invest in something, you can expect a return on that investment. And the return that I get on the money I spend on books is, you know, personal and professional development. So sometimes, I could end up spending anywhere between $15 to $30 on a good book. But having said that, while that is not cheap by any means, I find that some books have truly transformed my life. They have truly changed how I look at things. And some other books, while they may not have changed my life on a large scale, there have been aha moments while reading them, where just a single sentence or a single phrase has helped me discover the strategy to combat whatever challenge, whatever issue I might have been facing at that point in time. And when you look at books like that, what's $15 or $20? If it has the power to change your life, I think that is where the real value of a good book lies. So, hi, I've said hi to Manasi, but I want to say hi again, Manasi. Hi, Priya. Happy New Year. And Divya says, writing notes made us to buy books. Yes, I personally write a lot of notes, and I'm going to go through that step-by-step process very soon. So I've just covered whether to buy books or to borrow books from the library. Personally, I always buy them because I love to read a good book again and again, and also because I love to make lots and lots of notes. Now, I know some of you have already asked me today, as well as other occasions, you've emailed me to say that you want to start reading and you want to improve yourself, but you don't find the time. So today I'm going to give you some of my secrets on how I make time. So I'm, again, like all of you, I lead a busy lifestyle, but like I say, I manage to read on an average 20 books a year, and they truly have made a difference to the quality of my life. So I'm going to tell you about how I make time for that. Firstly, I want you to remember that you don't have to have a lot of time to read. You know, many people think that in order to develop the hobby of reading books, they must have a lot of time. That is not true. What I've found is that I read in tiny pockets of time. How do I do that? Firstly, reading doesn't happen by magic. You don't just decide to start reading and it doesn't miraculously happen. It's a choice you have to make, and you've got to go out and make the time. How do you do that? Firstly, I always carry a book in my handbag. Wherever I go, in my bag, there's always a book. So that if I arrive early, to an appointment, or if I'm waiting in the car to pick up my children from their tuitions or sport or whatever the case may be, even if it's a 5-minute wait or a 10-minute wait, instead of surfing the net or instead of looking at social media, I actually open the book and I start reading, okay? And that's how I find time. The other thing is I leave books in strategic places where I can find them. If you only have books that are sitting prettily in your bookshelf, you're never going to be motivated to pull one out and start reading. So what I do is, I leave a book on the kitchen bench top. I leave a book after I've made my bed. I leave one on the pillow. I leave one in the car. So that brings me to my next point, whether I read one single book at a time, and I actually don't. I read multiple books at a time. I use a lot of bookmarks to mark the page I'm at. Now, this is made easier because I'm reading nonfiction. Okay, you can't read multiple fiction novels at a time, because when you talk about fiction, you're talking about characters, you're talking about plot lines, and it just makes it a lot more complicated to read multiple fiction books at a time. But I spend a lot of my time nowadays reading non-fiction, or books that are aimed at development of some form. And when you're reading those kind of books, it's easy to read multiple books on the go, as long as you've marked the page where you were last. So that's why I keep books in a lot of strategic places. They're on my bed, they're on my kitchen bench top, they're in my car. And whenever I get pockets of time, 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever the case may be, truly I believe even 30 seconds is enough to read a life-changing sentence. So let's get rid of this myth that in order to be a reader, in order to pull this habit into your lifestyle, you need to make a lot of time. You don't. You just need to find pockets of time at different points during the day and read. Okay? Any questions so far, or have I been clear? And I'm just taking a sip of water. I can't even find this cup. Hold on. Here it is. I have to be very organized before I begin my Sunday chats with Nim. I've got to have my cup of water next to me, and a box of tissues, and a clock, just to make sure I don't go over time or under time or whatever the case may be. So is it fairly clear so far what I've shared with you? Where is everyone? Remember, there's a competition at the end of the 12 episodes, at the end of season 2, just to refresh your memory. And for all those who've arrived on board in the last few moments, there's going to be a competition at the end of season 2 of Sunday Chats with Nim. Season 2 is going to be made up of 12 episodes, and my team and I are going to go through every live session, and we're going to make a note of all the names of people who participated in this session, in every session, and then we're going to put all those names into a draw and pull out one lucky winner. The lucky winner gets 2 prizes. They get a copy of my book, Unlock the Real You, and they also get a 1-hour face-to-face live coaching session with me, in person if you're in Sydney, or on Skype if you are interstate or overseas. So I'm just going to take a little pause. Puneet says, great strategies. Thank you, Puneet. And Tejas says, Kindle is also a good option to keep books handy. Absolutely true, Tejas. Kindle is quite the rage nowadays. Personally, I'm a little old-fashioned. Like I said, I love scribbling in my books, and it truly has helped me grow as a person, not just in my personal life, but also in my professional life, in my career. And I find it a little difficult, obviously, to do that with Kindle books, and that's the only reason I've never quite become a fan of online books. But for the large part, I recognize that they're truly handy. I'm just someone who prefers printed books, but there's no right or wrong. One must do what suits one best. So I agree with you, Tejas. And Divya says, wow, multiple books at the same time. Yep, great skill. No wonder that you are a multifaceted. Thank you, Divya. And it is really an easy habit to form. Once you start getting the hang of it, it becomes a lot easier. So before I jump into the step-by-step demonstration of how I learn from the books I read, like I said at the start, I read on average 20 books a year. I read multiple books at the same time. And I'm just going to show you 3 books that I read in 2018. All these books I've read many times before, but like I say, some books that I have read have so much wisdom packed in them that I absolutely must read them again and again. And I've read all these books several times, but I read them specifically in 2018 as well. So I'm just going to show you those 3 because I'm going to use them as examples in the step-by-step demonstration I'm going to do today on how I maximize learning from the books that I read. And yes, I buy my books. I don't borrow them, because I love to write in those books. So the first one that I'm going to share with you, a book that I read in 2018 and many, many times before, is a book by Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Like I said, you're probably seeing the mirror image of this book, and that's because of the Facebook Live settings, which I need to fix someday. But that's the book. Brilliant, brilliant book. And like you can see, I've got bookmarks, that I keep. These bookmarks are actually of my book, Diary of an Immigrant Bride, so a bit of a plug there for my book, but they all have bookmarks, so that's one. The other amazing book I read last year is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, a brilliant author. If you've never read him, you must. A lot of his stuff is really deep and profound, and it's a lot of hard work to understand, particularly if you want to start utilizing that knowledge in your day-to-day life. But brilliant book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this little book, which is absolutely brilliant, that I also read last year and many times before, is by Richard Carlson, and it's called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Just a little sort of pocket book, very handy, very short chapters, brilliant, brilliant writing, and some amazing insights. So don't sweat the small stuff. So these are three of the many books that I read last year, and I'm going to show you step by step what I do after I buy a book from the bookstore. Like I said at the beginning of the session, yes, it can be a bit of an expensive hobby to spend between $15 to $30 on a good book. But like I say, the knowledge that you get from a good book is an investment you make in yourself. It is not an expense. And that's why I have lots and lots of good books, lots of stuff that I scribble, and I don't ever give my books out to anyone, even on a loan, because they have some deeply personal thoughts and insights that I've scribbled everywhere. Okay, but today I'm going to give you a sneak peek into some of those pages to show you how you too can start utilizing the knowledge from the books you read. So what are you going to need? There are some tools you will need before you read. I never read a book simply for pleasure. I read novels and fiction for pleasure, of course, but a non-fiction book or a management book or a self-help book, I never read that purely for pleasure. I read that purely for knowledge. I am someone who's hungry for knowledge, who's always on the lookout for learning something new. I'm always on the lookout to be a better person than I was yesterday. And that's why when I read a nonfiction book, I read it with a lot of determination. I read it with a lot of intent. Okay, so firstly, when I buy a book and I start reading it, I have a few things with me handy. Firstly, a pen. Secondly, lots of highlighters. I'm someone who likes different colors, and I use highlighters when I'm reading a book. Remember, I've bought it, I've not borrowed it, so I'm allowed to write in it. Lots of highlighters. And the third thing I have next to me when I'm reading a book is a little notebook. I've actually kept this little thing that comes with it because it says, take notes. It's for the genius at work. Love it. Just a simple book I think I got from the local supermarket. You don't need anything fancy. But yes, a good idea to keep a little notebook on the side so that you can take notes. Okay, so let's say I've bought a book from the bookstore and I've come home and I'm about to start reading it. Here's what I do. Firstly, let's say this is the book I've bought. Feel the fear and do it anyway. The first thing I do is I open it to the reviews of the book. As you can see, I've scribbled a lot of stuff. The reviews are from other authors or from other people who've, eminent people who've read the book, who are writing a little feedback about the book. So I firstly open to that page. And I go through all the reviews for the book. Why? Because firstly, it gives me an insight into what to expect from that book that I'm about to start reading. But secondly, and even more important, sometimes I come across words or phrases that I've never heard or seen before, and it adds to my vocabulary. So I know many people often ask me how they can expand their vocabulary, how they can improve their vocabulary. And even though I'm someone who's done a bachelor's and a master's in English literature, I still know that there is an ocean of words out there that I have never heard in my life and that I don't know the meaning of. So I always read the reviews of every book. It gives me an insight into the book, but it also gives me an opportunity to see words and phrases I've never seen before. The other thing that happens when I've read reviews is I sometimes come across one sentence or one phrase that absolutely transforms how I see life. So for example, in this book, author Louise Hay has written a review for this book, and she's written, "Living is taking chances." And this book has helped so many people, both men and women, to achieve success. So see what I have done. Is this clear, by the way? Can you actually see what I'm holding up? I've highlighted in green with my green highlighter the phrase, "Living is taking chances." I've highlighted it. Then on the side, in the margin, I've written, "What stops me from taking chances? What do I fear?" That's what I've written here. Okay, because when I read that sentence, it truly shook me. I realized that a lot of people simply drift through life. They're just existing. They're not living. And the reason they're not living is because they're afraid to take chances. It's only when you start taking chances, it's only when you look at life as an adventure, it's only when you start taking calculated risks that you truly start living. So it's such a small sentence. It's just such a short phrase. Living is taking chances. I've highlighted it. What I then did was I go to my notebook and I open it and I write that same phrase there. I'll show it to you in a minute. So see here at the top, life is taking chances. I've written the name of the book at the bottom, Feel the Fear. And here in the middle, I've made a little note and I've asked myself, when was the last time I took a chance on something that made me uncomfortable? So when I make these little notes in my notebook, they're just, a few sentences. But at night, I take this book and I flick through it and I just read little short sentences that I've made a note on, because that helps me truly reflect on where my life is going, on how my life is going forward, and whether or not I'm actually managing to achieve my goals. So how's it going so far? Hopefully you're understanding and hearing what I'm saying. Hopefully you're taking down some notes, because I'm a big note taker and a big believer in writing down stuff so that I don't have to trust it to my memory. And my memory is not the greatest anyway. So I write down every single thing. Even sometimes I meet interesting people, in a meeting, or if I've gone to a conference, I meet interesting people and they say interesting things. And the minute I get a moment, I'll take that notebook out of my handbag and I'll quickly scribble down that sentence, because I can think about it and reflect later on how I can use it in my own life. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. I go through the reviews section and I learn new words and phrases and I add it to my vocabulary. Also, as soon as you learn a new word, you must utilize it in your conversation within the next 3 to 5 days. You've got to use it multiple times in your conversation, and that's the only way a new word becomes part of your vocabulary. So to expand your vocabulary, you can't just underline an interesting word you've read, you've also got to use it. So once I've gone through the reviews, the next thing I do is I actually underline lines throughout the book that sort of strike a chord in me. So let's say the next book that I read was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and let's say I started reading through it. I come to chapter 2. Ta-da! Even more scribbling, lots of scribbling. I'm a lot neater than that. But I get so excited when I have all these new thoughts coming into my mind that I get a bit untidy when I'm scribbling. But see how I've underlined it? Not a very neat underline, but still I've underlined it and I've written some notes in the margins. So this sentence was, the greater part of human pain is unnecessary. It is self-created as long as the unobserved mind runs your life. What an amazing sentence. The rest of the chapter is good, but this one sentence truly, truly was an aha moment for me. I realized that a lot of our suffering is self-created. And if it is self-created, my dears, we can eliminate them because we are in control. So what have I written in the margin? All this stuff. I'm going to read it out to you. I asked myself some questions. I said, what are some problems that I have created for myself which I can eliminate by understanding the source of the problem? The minute you write certain questions for yourself after reading deep and profound words of wisdom, you start reflecting on your own life. Because, theory is all well and good unless and until you bring that theory and put it into action in your own life, you're never going to learn. So I made a note over there. And then, of course, I went to my faithful little notebook and I made a note of that sentence. The great part of human pain is unnecessary. And then I write the name of the book at the bottom. So at night, I don't have to go through all these books to find more wisdom. I just take my little notebook and read those few sentences that truly struck a chord with me. And that's how I keep the learning intact. And the last thing I'm going to cover with you before I finish today is how to put into practice everything that you have learned. Now, this is the hardest thing to do. And because it's so hard, most people actually don't end up utilizing any of the stuff, all the fantastic stuff that they've learned from the books. So I'm going to give you the example of this book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, that I showed you earlier. And I'm going to show you how I put some of it into action. So there's a chapter in this book, chapter 28, and more scribbling and more notes. I love my books. I've read all of these over and over again. Anyway, chapter 28 says, seek first to understand. Seek first to understand. And the lines that I have underlined are, if you want quality communication that is nourishing to you and others, understanding others must come first. When you understand where people are coming from, what they're trying to say, what is important to them, and so on, being understood flows naturally. What an amazing set of words that is. So I made a little note on the side, little instructions to myself. I'm always giving instructions to myself. And what I've written here is, always listen with the goal of understanding and not with the goal of just sharing my point of view. So untidy, I can't even read my own writing. But so I've written a little note to myself, always listen with the goal of understanding and not with the goal of just giving my point of view. So what I did after that, and I remember this very well when I wrote it, I then went to my diary, I went to my calendar, and I looked at which meetings I had that week, who were the people I was going to meet, and I promised myself that I would put this particular piece of advice into action. So that week, I made sure that whoever I met, whoever I spoke to, I truly listened without interrupting. I truly listened without, thinking about what I was going to say next. And I put that little piece of wisdom into action for the entire week. And what I found was when you start putting little bits and pieces that you read into action, pieces that you agree with, of course, it soon becomes a habit. It soon becomes a way of life. And you don't have to think about it anymore. It just comes to you naturally. So my friends, we've run out of time. Let me quickly read some of the comments. Hi, Sylvia Auntie. Thank you for joining in. Hi, Kalpana. Vandana is taking notes. I feel I'm listening to my daughter's reading habits. Addition to it, she loves to read different dictionaries. Fantastic, Vandana. Fantastic. It's a great habit. Always a good idea to read dictionaries and collect new words. Like I said, Just making a note of new words is not enough. What we also need to do is start utilizing those words wherever possible in our day-to-day conversations, because that's how the human brain remembers. You know, once it's entrenched in our mind, the word, it becomes part of our daily vocabulary. So hopefully you've enjoyed this wonderful session with all the books, with 3 of the books that I read last year. And if you've enjoyed this session, I'm hoping that people near and dear to you will also enjoy it. So please do share this video in your network so that other people can also hopefully, you know, take away a little bit of insight into how they can maximize, you know, whatever they read from books. Now, if you would like to know a little bit more about my work, if you'd like to you know, explore some of the work I've done, there are a few ways you can do that. You can connect with my Facebook page, Nim Golkar Author. You can read either of the 2 books I've written. You can read both, which will be even better. This one is, again, it's a mirror image, thanks to Facebook Live settings. Unraveling Anjali, Diary of an Immigrant Bride, my very first book. Or you can read Unlock the Real You, which is my second book. Or you can read my third book when it is ready. I'm currently writing it. And another way of staying in touch is through my YouTube channel, Nim Golkar. Please do subscribe to that. All my videos will be posted there. So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope that the next book you read, whatever it is, you will hopefully be able to utilize some of the strategies that, that I have used to maximize my learning from everything I read. If you're listening to this after the live session has ended, don't forget to write the word book lover in the comments if you are a fellow book lover like myself. So good luck with all the reading you're going to do in 2019. I cannot wait to hear your success stories. Until next time, take care.